So from here, we're going to work on annotation of our diagram. First, I'm going to show you how to do a symbol for the title of this image. If we go within our workspace and go to Window, I'm going to turn some things on. Make sure my symbols layer is clicked on, and then also I want to show the grid below it so that I can develop some lines that are at a specific distance. If you go to View, Rulers, and hit Show Rulers, you'll see the dimensions you're working with. To change this, you can go right click and make sure they're both at inches. Okay, great. Now I have two grids at inches, so that one of these is equals to 1 inch. If you scroll out or scroll in, you'll see your rulers adjust to that. So for the symbol that I want to create, I want to make a tag for the drawing title name. If I go into here, you can do this however you'd like. I'm going to make just a circle. Actually, turn this off for a second. Go into to make the snaps appear, if you go to your smart guides and make that checked on, that'll generally snap to most things. I'm also going to turn my guides, snap to grid on, so that when I'm developing this tag, it'll be snapping to these distances. So I want it to be, and you'll feel it when you're working with it. I want to make, as I know that my page is going to be this letter size, I want to make a tag that's specifically at this size. You should have them probably at the scale of the drawing, but for right now, I'm going to just make this at a ½ inch, or an eighth of an inch, or a quarter of an inch. Let's see which one this is. Yes, at a quarter of an inch for my circle. And then I want to make the tail of it 1.5 inches. Or 2 inches. So now when I click on this, I'm going to add some text. First make an area that I want it to exist in. Then type in area type tool, click within it, and I'm just going to say image title. It can be generic for now because I'm going to show you how to make a symbol and then go in and edit it for each diagram you're working with. Then I'm going to pull it down and then bump it over 1 so that the length of this is on my tag. I'm going to make sure that this is at a font and size I like. I'm going to make it a 10 point for this top title. And then pull this down and set a scale. Even though there isn't one specified, I want to have it be there as an option. Make this at a slightly smaller font. Put this below. I'm going to change the justification of this. I'll leave it for now. I'm going to turn the snap to grid off after this so that I can manipulate that text so that it's not intersecting that line. Then I'm going to drag this off one more time, or just create a box since I'm having some troubles with that. And double click in here and type in 0, 0. I'm going to give it a 2 type or 2 letter spacing so that when I get up into duplicate numbers, the space that I allowed for within this circle isn't compromised. I'm going to turn off my grid now because it's actually causing, or snap to grid off, because it's causing more problems than it is helping me right now. Then I'm going to fit this as close as I can to my text. If you go into here, you can sometimes select transform and then, oh no, that's in InDesign. Never mind. So within here, I'm just going to eyeball based off of the center point as best I can to where my grid of the center of the circle is. If you select the both of them, you can use these align tools. It'll be up at the top. They can also be accessed through here if you click align. And I want them to be aligned at the center and then the center in this regard. So now when I'm also going to actually change that scale because that's at 8 point and I want it to be at 10, so that's larger. And now whenever you see this with your text, that means that the box, when you have your text area, is too big. So I'm going to go in and estimate this again and then pull that closer to the center. And then also pull this down away from my line. So right now I have a nice little tag. I'm going to select all of them and put them onto a tag layer, create a new one. Tags or symbols. That's the better way to call it. This is how it's referenced in Illustrator. So if you want to look into further editings of this, if you type into Adobe Illustrator into Google and look up symbols, this is what we're working in right now. So then I'm going to move all of these to the current symbols layer. You could see that it wasn't before because it was purple and blue. That means that it was on these random layers. So now when I select this, I think that it's all in the symbols layer. I'm going to select it over here and it is confirming that it is. Then I'm going to pull up my symbols. My symbols palette, which can be accessed over here, which I turned off. And pull this off into my workspace so you can see what's going on. So I created two before, they're still within my library. So if you do delete something and then create it in here, it'll be saved. I'm going to select all of this. I don't need to group it, I don't think, because as I did before, it seemed to not cause a problem, and drag it and drop it into my symbols. I'm going to change this into title. Title 01 for now. It should be a little bit more descriptive because I think when you get a bunch of symbols, you'll probably not be able to distinguish them, but I'm going to do this for now. I'm going to change it to a graphic and hit OK. So now the one I just created is in here. If I delete this, you can see that there's an X put in there. That means that it's linked to a library or a palette or some kind of other information within Illustrator. When we did the symbols pull down from another tutorial, you saw that. So if I delete this, I can now drag and drop this in, and I have an image title tag that I can put anywhere in my drawing. To edit this locally as an independent instance, the only way that I know is right now is to right click and hit break link to symbol. This is going to put it, interesting, it put it back to its initial layers, so I'm going to force this to be all on my symbols layer. I will look into that. But you can start to change the text now independently, and it's not going to change this because you broke that link to the symbol. Make it 01 and then make it scale, not to scale. So that's how we can begin to have some kind of referenced consistency within our tags. I'm also going to develop over here some annotated notes. I'm going to collapse my symbols layer, make a new layer called annotation. Okay. And then lock everything else so that when I'm developing these lines, they don't snap and detract from the line I had. And then I'm going to use the pen tool to draw out lines and then make space for it to be text in InDesign. So if you click your pen tool, I'm just going to start to say I would call out this surface as surface 01, this surface is surface 02, and for right now that's all I think I'll include. It'll be quite a simple diagram. If you hold off Shift when you're developing a line, it's going to snap to the 45, the verticals and horizontal orientations from that point. So I'm going to hold that, pull it off and click to an angle and it does a 45-degree angled line. And then I'm going to click this over here. So the rule that I'm going to have for my arrows is that they're all going to be pulled off at 45 and then going over here to the right of my diagram. You can develop any series you want of your own. And then I'm going to go in here. It's at 1 point default. I'm going to change it to 0.25 so that it's just a construction line and information from my drawing and not competing with the actual line weight that I have drawn. And I'm going to go to stroke and I'm going to put an arrow to it. So I'm going to use a less articulated arrow for now, this one. And then I'm going to click off just so you can see the scale that comes in at. This relationship is proportionate to the line thickness. If I were to initially have this arrowhead at 100%, which it's indicated right here at the scale, it's going to be 100% related to that line thickness. So if I change it to 1 point, it's going to bump up. However, I want to have this to be 0.25, and I want to make my scale at 300 so that I have a higher sized or a larger sized arrow that's still smaller than the text that I'm going to be using. I'm going to keep all of my text consistent throughout. So it's going to generally be at like a 10 point, and I just want these two to have a relationship that they don't overtake the information that I have drawn. And then in terms of the second surface, you can make a copy of that first. I'm going to turn off my grids because I think it's causing me to have some issues with the graphics. And I'm going to try and make a duplicate of this. I don't think I can. I'm going to go to here. Let's see if this works. Just having some issue because of the recording, and it's clicking delayed after. Okay, so I'll just Control-C, Control-V. And see, I've lost my the ability of the alignment between these two. So one of the things I wanted to show you with this was that if you want to have these all referenced within a certain orientation, if you select the two of them, you can go back to that align tool and start to align them. So I'm going to do that to this one and just bring it down so it lightly touches that outline. And then now I know that these two are sharing the same line. So when I do it in InDesign, I'll have a nice text field, I'll have an annotation, and then all of my drawing by itself. If I wanted to change, I think this is locked. If you want to change the way this is, I use the direct selection tool, and I want to drag it over just to say if it's pointing to something further in the drawing. I hold down Shift to make sure that it's an orthogonal move. Click. Great. And now I'm going to go in and I can move this with the direct selection tool and move it back to be the intersect. So that way I can hold that angle by selecting both this point and this point with the direct selection tool, and also hold the alignment that I have here. So in terms of this, we're going to pause here and then we're going to go into the final steps.